You've been trapped in your high-rise apartment for days now. No one knows what the fog is, but it hides everything below the third floor, and so far no one who's gone into it has returned. It wasn't the first time I'd spent 3 days alone in my apartment, but it was probably going to be my last. Once you were stuck there, home could feel oppressive. No amount of family photos and positive signage could turn it into anything other than a prison. We'd thought we'd learned how to deal with that during the pandemic. We, or at least I, was wrong. I paced back and forth in the half-hallway between my kitchen and the bedrooms, anything to be able to walk without going outside. I could hear them through the walls, a handful of my neighbors screaming at each other. Running over the same points, yelling back and forth as constantly as pacing. Only their cycle was a little more hateful each time. 7 floors down there was a dense fog bank that stretched across the city skyline and dripped into the building. People had gone out there and so far none of them had come back or answered any calls. As far as we could tell in here, there was no way out. That was what the screaming was about in the hallway. The same argument about whether we should be leaving or not. Then they would move to sharing food, then leaving, then the food, rinse, repeat until the water runs out. Didn't know when that was going to happen, but it had to be coming. I could recognize one of the voices out there. The men's voices melded as they crawled through the drywall, but Heather had joined them again. Heather had a sister outside who needed regular medication and her prescription was coming up in 2 days. That meant that she'd wasted her breath trying to get a search party together. Turned out people stopped caring about everyone outside when the fog was threatening the apocalypse. I slowed my pacing as the yelling stopped for a moment and settled into quiet sobs and whispers. I couldn't hear the words, but I understood that someone had gone too far too fast and everything broke down. We'd barely known each other before this week. What the fuck were we supposed to do in this situation? The sobs persisted and footsteps went down the hallway. A blessed break in the arguing. Just as I was starting a deep breath of relief, there was a knock at the door. I knew who it was before I answered. Heather was curled in on herself, the black roots against her blonde dye making her unkempt hair look worse than it was. She pulled a thin green cardigan across her chest, stretching the fabric to have something holding her. She didn't look me in the eyes, she knew my answers and didn't want to revisit the conversation. Do you have any Kleenex? She asked me on the floor. Paper towel if it works, I offered. I was already walking away when she started nodding, talking a half step into the apartment to join me as I pulled a few sheets out of the kitchen. If she wasn't such an emotional mess, I might have been worried about her seeing the piled dishes. You okay? I asked after a second of silence. My voice sounded weird, flat. I knew I wasn't going to help. I was asking to ask. Heather paused, just long enough to be considering an honest answer before saying, yeah. I'm fine. Here. Paper towel offered. Thanks. And taken. Heather looked up, for half a second meeting my eyes on my level, then hers wide shock wide. What? I asked. Heather didn't respond, her breathing just quickened. I turned around, following her eyeline to the window, just quick enough to see something move on the other side.